Hello, I'm Nathaniel Smith, and welcome to Bookcasting. So we're going to talk about a very touchy subject, let's say. We're going to talk about pornography. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not going to be talking about pornography and, I don't know, praising that sort of shit, or in terms of moralizing how it's bad for you or anything like that, but rather I want to talk about the rising problems that pornography is bringing, especially with these new technologies that are coming in, which we'll get into a little later, that I just feel is problematic. To really start with pornography, we have to talk about hyperreality. What is hyperreality? Well, the definition here is an image or simulation that either distorts the reality it purports to depict, or does not in fact depict anything with a real existence at all, but which nonetheless comes to constitute reality. Basically, apply this instead of image and simulation, put in, well, sex. And it applies the same way. That would be what hypersexuality would be. And this becomes increasingly problematic because with an ever-increasing amount of hypersexuality, real sex becomes more uninteresting to people and dull to people. People can easily find faults or warts in people that you would never find in the perfect image of pornography, such as in the hentai, Hentai artists do so much to make those art so, nice, as it were, that the real thing may seem underwhelming, at least on a visual level. True. Which, of course, most people do not talk about. They don't even consider the possibility of hypersexuality being a thing or the consequences that can bring. And this leads to another point that doesn't get talked about in terms of pornography, which is the roller coaster or the attraction obsession. Sex becomes, well, a fetish, to put it bluntly, but more than that, there's this sort of constant attraction aesthetic that porn brings into sex, about finding new attractions, new thrills to keep people excited, so the old ones don't become, that. So, ordinary, vanilla sex, if you will, or what have you, would just be boring by comparison to something more saucy and lewd, Ugly Bastard or whatever. Which, in of itself, can be problematic, because you're always looking for that next thrill, and the more you keep looking for the next thrill, will you ever be satisfied with just a normal sex life, whatever a normal sex life even is at this point? And this leads to the real thing I wanted to talk about, the rise in this being the sex robots here, and this being the VR girlfriends. Now, already in terms of just pornography itself, because of the ease accessibility of pornography these days, which, let me just make this point very clear because most people don't realize this, okay? Porn was not easily accessible throughout the majority of human society. Seriously. Before the internet brought you all the porn you ever wanted, like that, you had to go to pornographic adult sections, mainly in the old adult stores, when they used to sell VHSs, if you know what a VHS is. And the reason I bring this up is because the one advantage the sort of adult areas / adult stores had was that you had to be a certain age to be able to access that sort of pornographic imagery, whereas now you don't need any, there's no age barrier. You could, as long as you have the internet, you can easily access anything that's sexy. So that can be a problem, especially if it's put upon young children using their phones. I mean, even on the phones, you can find the stuff. Just look up the word sexy on your phone, and I'm sure you'll find something. Anywho, where was I? Right, the ease of accessibility is so much more now. We've sort of normalized pornography to such an extent we don't even question it. So, again, back in the 80s, you have these adult section areas of the stores to buy the adult goods and so forth. And before that, you had, magazines. That used to be a thing, Playboy with the bunny ears, and then there wasn't any. There was. I won't say there wasn't anything pornographic before that, but the thing is, the further back you go in history, the more difficult it was for the regular person to get porn because it was generally expensive and you generally had to get an artist. You know, the pornography really kicked up once the photography started to become a thing, especially once it became ease of accessibility with photographs, because in the early days it was much more difficult, cost a bit more money, had to be a bit more professional with using photography or train yourself to be, but then everyone could do it. And I'm getting off topic. The point is, if you go, I don't know, 200 years ago per se, right? If you wanted some saucy, manga hentai art kind of, porn shtick, like you'd have to get a good artist that could do that, and you'd have to pay them a lot of money to do that, which most people couldn't afford, like the average Joe. Only like really rich people could afford that shit. Especially if they're a good artist. Yeah. And basically because of, back in the day, because there wasn't that ease of accessibility of porn, basically people actually had to find a mate to do the thing with. Whereas now you don't really need to because of the ease and accessibility of porn. And this is where problem's going to get worse in the future. When sex robots, these things, and I say this both in the context because the woman sex robots, but inevitably even the men sex robots, they'll be for the ladies, or maybe the ladies will like the woman robots. I don't know. The point is, when this becomes easily accessible, if not in this, in terms of this range, because I actually think sex robots will always be expensive and most people won't be able to afford them. However, everyone will be able to afford VR sex boyfriend, girlfriends, which more than likely will take a lot of, take away a lot of people's time. And I think honestly there is a great possibility that if this sort of software with the sort of AI, VR, both AI and VR sort of create these perfect boyfriend, girlfriends, etc., that's completely set to every sort of like character personality that you want. So you can literally program this boyfriend, girlfriend to be whatever you want, and they can hang out with you all day, every day, because inevitably they're going to have it where the VR, first off, it won't be bulky headsets. They'll inevitably find a way to plug it directly into your brain, which is not as far off as you would like to believe. And it'd be so immersive after a while, especially with the we're already seeing that to some extent. Like the technology is already coming to such a level. It's insane. I don't pretend to know how long it's going to take until it's so immersive that people will just choose to live in virtual reality for the rest of their lives and just ignore the real world altogether. But, that's a very good possibility that can happen, and most of you at least have an idea of the possibility of that happening. And the fact that we don't realize this, like, porn is already, as I mentioned earlier, because of hypersexuality and stuff like that, already problematic in its own ways. Whether you accept porn or not, whether you like porn or not, that's beside the point. But regardless of the moral quandaries you feel towards pornography, the fact of the matter is, there is the possibility of sex itself becoming underwhelming due to it not being as good as how you imagine it in your perfect little hyper-sexualized world, thanks to all these little fantasies, sexual fantasies, that are brought out by your, porn addiction. Yeah. And again, this is already a problem with just regular porn. Add that with virtual, not just VR, but VR AI boyfriend girlfriends. It's a recipe for disaster, especially because the chances are more and more people will take the route of VR AI. Because again, once it's affordable and it's easy of accessible for everyone, and they're gonna make this shit so good that it's gonna be addictive to the point that you don't want to ever leave the site or the VR world, etc. It's incredibly dangerous with, just think if, just a third of the population chose to live in a virtual reality, and more importantly, in just virtual relationships, having no real connections to anyone in the real world. I mean, like, the internet itself is already disassociate us with one another already as it is. Like, do we really want to push it to the next level of that? Do we, what kind of consequences can that already bring? Like, we already got an idea what that's like with how the internet's been so addictive and how that's affected people on a personal level. We're already in a quasi, like, Truman Show life. So, like, you know, this is very serious problems, and I don't see many people talking about it. And then it gets shows, what was it, like Cyberpunk 2077, that actually shows this sort of VR porn, and it's like, it's no big deal, it's not hugely effective or anything. Dude, that old dude has probably been in VR sexual, like, pornographic relationships his whole fucking life, and has never gotten laid once in his entire fucking life. Let that sink into your head for a second. Because that's quite likely a possibility already. Like, I mean, I hope I'm just being paranoid and this isn't going to become our reality, but it's very possible. And, like, there's very little red flags brought about it. We've normalized porn to such an extent, we don't even realize how unnormal it is. In past society, people actually fucking got laid with people most of the time. They didn't have to, rely on porn to fill their, I don't know, desires up or whatever. Anyways, I think that covers everything that I needed to say, because, yeah, I think that'll do for today. So, see you guys later.